Whether the fear of flying keeps you at home during a family vacation or hinders a potential business trip, the more one understands aviation, the more comfortable they'll feel in the air.
Turbulence is one of those things that is sometimes predictable, but it does surprise people, which makes it a bit of a challenge. But the airplanes are built very sturdily, and we also have certain procedures that we follow as pilots in order to handle it. So for instance, if you're flying in rougher conditions, you would probably slow the airplane down. So we wouldn't fly as fast to cruise speed. Kind of the similarities would be like going over a bumpy road. Yeah. You wouldn't use highway speed if you're going over a rough road. You'd slow down, and you'd do the same thing in the airplane. Normally what will happen is as soon as a pilot realizes that he's flying in turbulent air, especially in the airlines, they'll try to find another altitude where it's not as rough. Mm-hmm. So once they recognize that, then they'll do that. And the beauty of the airline flight is that they will have had somebody else probably already flew that route before. And so if somebody's already ahead of them, they'll tell the controller, they'll tell other pilots. You'll hear conversations on the radio that sort of says, you might want to watch out. At this altitude, we experience this. Basically, the whole idea behind airline travel is that if one engine quits, you have other engines to keep that aircraft flying. And so, again, going back to our training and our procedures, pilots know what they have to do, and they have very specific checklists that we follow, and everything is very precise. We train on all of these things. Not only do we train, but we also retest. We will have either annual or biannual testing that we have to pass. We have also really high standards of maintenance and for the aircraft themselves as well. So the likelihood of that happening is very remote. I believe the stats that I've heard are something like less than 1%. And when you consider the amount of air travel, the number of kilometers that are flown, the number of hours that airplanes fly throughout Canada, that's a pretty small number. For any of us, anybody involved in commercial flying, us included with our flight training division, you can't fly over water unless you have certain precautions. So it would be flotation devices in the seats, for instance, lifeboats on the larger airliners, that kind of thing would be there. Flotation devices that come right out of the wings to get the people, effectively evacuated out of the aircraft. On the big airlines, what it means is you can't go over water unless you're within gliding distance or you have more than one engine. Mm-hmm. So that's where the bigger aircraft that have more than one engine, because again, if you have some emergency, then you still have the other engine or engines that will continue on your trip. Mm-hmm. And again, it's also based on taking a look at your fuel load and making sure that you have sufficient fuel, that if something goes wrong, you still have the ability to make it safely on the ground again.